Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, just before we get started, I just want to know, were all of you able to hear Mr. Boyle? Shake your heads. Yes, okay. John Corey, are you present? If you can hear me, please take your microphone off mute, because we're going to get started. I see his name up here, but I don't see his face, so I'm not sure where we are with him. Phil, do you have a directive here? Any of the Phils?
I'm trying to unmute him here, or at least asking him to unmute.
And I don't know if this would be of assistance because I'm not sure how he's participating, but *6 may do it if it's via phone, although it sounds like he's on a computer.
Did you hear that, Phil? *6. It might be a suggestion for him to unmute.
Yeah, the participant has to do *6 if I can.
All right.
Oh, okay, I'm waiting for my microphone. There we go. Okay, everybody. Good afternoon. It is 4:12, and welcome to the September 2020 meeting of the Bloomington Transportation Commission. We'll start with Mr. Allen doing the roll call.
Commissioner Beneke?
Present.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Commissioner Brightweiser? Present. Commissioner Sanders?
Here.
And Commissioner Corey? John, I think you're still muted.
Here.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Corey, are you present?
I am present.
Okay, thank you. I just want to just repeat that this, in compliance with the Open Meetings Act, we need to make sure that all of us are speaking loud enough so that it is on the recording, or else, I guess, right? So we could hear everybody except Eddie. You were just a little bit shallow, but I could hear everybody. Mr. Boyle, are we good?
We are.
Okay, it appears that we have a quorum. Mr. Allen, is that correct? Mr. Allen, we have a quorum, correct?
That is correct. We have a quorum, and we do not have any public comments.
Okay, well, you're rolling right through these items here. Okay, let's review and approve the minutes of the February 18th, 2020 regular meeting of the Bloomington Transportation Commission. That seems to have been quite some time ago, this being September, but I'm hoping that people have had the opportunity to look through it, and I'm looking to see if there is a motion to approve the February 18th meeting minutes.
This is Vicky Lee Dunnicky. I will motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Ms. Beneke.
This is John. I'll second the motion.
Okay, and we have a second by Mr. Corey. Thank you. And then I guess let's move to the regular. Oh yes, I'm sorry. Let me skip that. All in favor?
I'm sorry. We're going to need a roll call vote on everything.
Okay, we're going to need a roll call. So, Mr. Allen, I'm going to ask you to call the roll for the review of the minutes.
Okay. So the motion is to approve the minutes. Commissioner Beneke?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Commissioner Brightweiser?
Yes.
Commissioner Corey?
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Okay. Thank you. Are we ready to move ahead? Kind of out of sync here with all this equipment here, but okay. The election of a vice chairperson, shall we go ahead with that? Okay, we have a quorum. Hey. All right. It looks like we need to elect a vice chairperson. It appears that Mr. Heenan is not with the commission at this time. Is that correct?
Correct. His term expired in April, and he decided not to renew. So.
Okay, good to know. All right, wow, it's just been so long. Do we have, um, do we have a nomination? I guess, isn't that the word I'm looking for? Sorry, kind of out of sync here. Do we have a nomination for vice chairman? May I make a nomination?
You may, and anybody may
Sure.
feel free to nominate themselves if they would be willing to
That
do
would
it.
be great, or I'm going to nominate. So somebody raise your hand, and I will call upon you if you have something. I don't know if anybody wants to speak up here. Okay, may I nominate Mr. Brightweiser to serve as vice chairperson? Would there be a second for that?
This is John Corey. I will second that motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Corey. I would assume, once again, Mr. Allen. Oh,
Ed, are you willing to accept the nomination?
Yes.
yes, he is. That's nice. You know, he's not here to twist his arm, so I guess we can't. I assume we'll need to have another roll call vote, correct, Mr. Boyle?
Yes, I guess my thought is though, are you, are you moving to nominate him or are you moving to elect him?
Okay, you're absolutely.
Well, I mean, that just seemed unclear to me. I wasn't able
Okay.
to quite get that.
Wow. What would be the correct move, Mr. Boyle?
Well, I think it can be either way. It sounds like you're,
He's been nominated.
yeah, he's been nominated. Are there any, you want to see if there's any other nominations?
Yeah, okay, we'll do that. Are there any other nominations? Okay, seeing none and hearing none, we.
Why don't you
will-
can you kind of clarify your motion then to be a nomination, or I'm sorry, a motion that he be vice
Yes.
chair and
Okay, I would like to make a motion that Mr. Brightweiser be the vice chair of the Transportation Commission, and until our next regularly
Mr.
scheduled
Corey, are
your
you willing to
election,
second that?
which I
I'm-
believe is in the fall. So-
Yes, I'm willing to second that.
All right,
Okay, Mr. Corey.
let's
thank
take a
you.
roll call, Mr. Allen.
Okay.
Commissioner Beneke,
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley,
Yes,
Commissioner Brightweiser,
Abstain.
abstain. Commissioner Corey,
Yes, present.
and Commissioner Sanders.
Yes.
Okay, thank
okay, I
you.
believe we have a majority, and congratulations, Mr. Brightweiser. Okay, shall we move ahead to item B?
Thank you. So item B, we have a project in front of us. We are looking at extending the Constitution Trail down on the southeast side of town. Staff regularly tries to incorporate elements out of the bicycle master plan as well as our other master plans when the opportunities present themselves, as well as when we can make them present themselves. This is a perfect example of that. IDOT has released ITEP funding, Illinois Transportation Enhancement Project, which is coming through the federal government. There's information on the specific grant in the packet that I won't go into great detail on. I will say though that depending on the applications received, the dollar amounts of the projects received, as well as the score of our individual community against all the other communities that apply, we will be looking at either an 80-20 match where we contribute 20%, a 90-10, or a 100% fund. So our cost, if we get selected for this grant, is at most 20% of the project cost. We have with us here that I'm going to kick it over to is Craig Schonkweiler. He is our brand new city engineer, replacing Kevin Cothe when he was promoted up to Public Works Director. He's been working hard and knows a little bit more of the details on the project on this, so I'm going to have him speak to the details. So Craig, go ahead.
Afternoon, folks. We're going to have Phil drive the visuals, and I'll be talking from another computer. So we'll just bear with us a little bit here. Give you a little background on myself. I was at the city of Urbana for 14 years as an assistant city engineer. I went to Bloomington, Indiana for a while, was city engineer there. And now I'm back in Illinois at your fine city since May. As far as the project, Phil, if you could pull up, that overall map. So we've got a lot of colors on this map, but Phil, if you would zoom in between Lincoln and Lafayette. So that this section, I'm getting a lot of feedback, I guess. I don't know if. So this section, yeah, that's much better. I was getting a lot of reverb there. So this section from Lincoln to Lafayette is not the section that we're going to apply for, but that's the next logical piece south of Lincoln for the extension of the Constitution Trail. This piece would be a local project that we intend to place in or make a request in the upcoming budget season with the city council to be included in the capital improvement plan. That's about 1,200 feet. It's, I'll show some photos later, but it's going to be about a 10-foot path. It'll be along the metal recycling place there. There are some obstacles there that we wanted to leave that as a local project, which makes it easier for us to get through than using the federal money. But that would be the next logical piece from Lincoln to Lafayette. So the ITEP portion that we're looking to apply for would be from Lafayette, and if Phil would move up a little bit here, down to Hamilton. So the piece here would run on existing right-of-way that you see in green that the city has already purchased along Easy Street. We will go under Veterans Parkway. There's a span there that I'll show you some pictures that we can use. We'll go along the west side of the railroad track there. There's a grove of trees there that Phil has the pointer at, the hand at. And then we'll turn south on Bunn. And there's some nice space there on the west side of the road between Bunn and the mobile home park, where we can build the path along all the way down to Hamilton. Now, with the Hamilton Road project that we're currently at about 95% plans complete, that cyan dash line, that we're scheduled to start construction, say next construction season. So that would provide that east-west connection of the Constitution Trail. This would provide that gap piece up from Lafayette down to Hamilton. Now, in the master plan some time ago, the path was intended to run along the railroad right-of-way down to its intercept at Hamilton Road. That has been shifted to over to Bunn Street. And that's largely due to the railroad siding there and just issues of running along the railroad. So if we could separate from the railroad, it was felt that this was a better path to get down to Hamilton Road. Phil, can you go to the overall map of the bicycle network? So this is more of a 10,000 foot view here. You can see in let's let it load, the black line there down to Lincoln up on the north side. That's the existing path. And then that piece from Lincoln down to Lafayette there's a short piece there. And then from there all the way down to Hamilton, that's the section that we're talking about applying for the ITEP grant. Let's go to the photos, if you would. So we've got, while he's pulling this up, we've got some ground level photos. This is that local piece from Lincoln to Lafayette. This is along the metal recycling center. We would look at basically moving this fence into the inside along where that grass strip is. That's where the path would be. We would construct a separate fence for safety reasons between the proposed path and the railroad track, much like you see elsewhere within the city when we're paralleling the railroad track. If you go to the next slide, please. So this would be looking along Easy Street. Easy Street's to the right there. We do have a maze of power poles that are within the city right away, but we feel that we can snake the path safely through these maze of poles. You do see a nice, like in the foreground here, a nice flat area for the path. By the way, the path would be 10 foot wide, which would match the existing paths and would be a asphalt path. Okay, so we have a question.
Yeah, excuse me. Thanks, Craig. Could you go back one picture, please? Thank you. So I'm understanding this correct. The idea would be that there would be, where we're looking at this, kind of where the signpost is, at the top of the ridge. Yeah, correct, right there. So we would be seeing a fence between. That would be the path would go along the top of the ridge there. Then we would see a fence between the path and the railroad tracks, and then we would see another path on the left side designating the private property. Is that correct?
So the path would go where you see do you see the green grass there? That's where the path would go. This fence here with the barbed wire would be moved into inside to the west. There would be a new fence installed at the old fence location.
Correct. And did I hear right that there would be then another fence between the path and the? What I'm trying to get to is what would it look like between the path and the railroad tracks for pedestrian safety?
So there would be another fence. Yeah, that's correct. A 6 foot tall fence.
And I can't. So I'm thinking off the top of my head of other stretches of the trail, for example, kind of south of the Bloomington Public Library, where it runs along the railroad tracks north of Lincoln Street. Is that, off the top of my head, I can't picture that there's a fence there. Is it standard practice for us to be putting a fence between the? How do we normally handle it?
Yeah, it is standard practice actually down there where you're talking about, and also to the west and kind of the warehouse district. There's some fences like that where we separate the path from the railroad. And we haven't, in the next phase, if we get the grant, we'll go through a study phase with this. And during that phase, we would define the parameters, but it's likely that the railroad will ask for a fence paralleling the path for safety reasons.
That helps. Thank you.
So
Okay.
again, this piece here that you see would be a separate local project that we would look to do in advance of the ITEP project to the south.
Is this picture looking south?
Yes. No, it's actually looking north.
Okay,
It's looking north from Lafayette to the north.
thank you.
And that's a good point, sir. I'll clarify as we go along the direction.
Since we're on this picture, let me get this right here. So we've got the trees on the right, we have the railroad, we have an embankment. Would be a better fence, there would be the trail, and then this business here on the left, correct? Would there be a fence between the trail and the business on the left?
Yes. Yes.
Whose land, is that the railroad's land on the right there? That, I mean, this, I know we're not the environmental group here, but the erosion there kind of concerns me. Wow, I guess that's their business, not ours, right?
Yeah, that is the railroad's land. Basically from the fence there to the top of the bank on the right would be the railroad's property. Yes.
Who, is there, since we're on this, we might as well finish. This is this is the private, this is not where the ITEP funds are going, correct?
That is
And
correct.
what would be the time frame for this piece? This, what is it, 1,200 feet or whatever you were talking about there, right?
So pending placing it in the upcoming budget, we would hope probably within a 2-year period to at least get ground broke on this section.
Is there any acquisition of land that needs to happen or any agreement or is this city easement at this point?
There would be an acquisition that is needed. That would be the major hiccup here. Yes.
Oh, I wouldn't hope so. No.
I'm saying we don't own the land,
Yeah,
so there's
I understand
always a wild card
It's
with
always
that.
a hiccup, huh? Let me talk to him. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so again, this one's looking north. We just skipped down to the end of Easy Street looking north. Now we flipped, we're looking south. This is at the end of Easy Street. On the left there, it kind of swoops across. You see in the middle of the picture, Veterans Parkway Bridge there. So we'd be heading due south and then cross Easy Street to get back near the city right away there.
Okay, just for clarity's sake here, are we near the Bloomington Meats? Is that where we are?
We are probably a good mile yet away. So Bloomington Meats would be to the south.
Okay,
We
so
are-
we're further north of there yet
Yes.
still. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Is there an issue? I'm down at the Bloomington Meats thing, or maybe I'm still talking about the same place. My concern here was the flooding with the part that goes under Veterans Parkway down that way. Is flooding a concern with the underpass part of that?
We walked that section. I didn't see indication of potential flooding through there. And Bloomington Meats is farther south and really outside of the scope of the project.
Do you know which flooding I'm talking about down there on Bunn Street?
No, I don't.
The underpass, if you're going south on Bunn towards Bloomington Meats, underneath the Veterans Parkway underpass is a serious flooding area. There's like a lot of flooding there. But
So as part of, with federal funds, we would have to do what they call a phase 1 study, which is a preliminary study where we'll go through environmental review, a location review, alignment review, and we would also look at the required drainage to keep the path from flooding to the desired storm event.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the trail would not cross under. It would cross under at the railroad tracks, not at Bunn Street. Correct.
That's correct. That's correct. We haven't got down there yet, but if you jump back to that picture, the set of pictures there, if you would.
I was just going to point out real quick, right now we're coming down Easy Street, which is through here. So we're sitting right probably in here somewhere looking south. And then here's Veterans Parkway here, just for frame of reference.
Okay, can you advance the next slide, please, Phil? So this is the railroad. We're looking north, Easy Street's to the west there, just to the left. Can you advance the next slide? And the next one. So this is where the railroad crosses underneath Veterans. We're looking south. We would actually be to the right there. There's a span to the right there. It was kind of hard to get a good picture because of all the brush and undergrowth. Can you advance the next slide? So we would be to the right there. Advance the next slide, please. So there's a slot here. Basically, it's an unused span where there used to be railroad tracks. years ago, that would be the space of the path. So right now we're looking south towards Bunn. We would be curving to the right of that set of brush in front, and going to the right over and around this this area. This was just an ancillary picture of some utilities. So the path would, in essence, go straight ahead here, just to the right of the group of trees to the left. Okay. This was, we're just looking within the span back at Easy Street. So those poles in the foreground or the background are at Easy Street there looking north. So now we've switched 180. We're looking towards Bunn Street. The kind of brush or trees are to the left there. And then that clearing area, that's where the path would be intended to go. And there is city right of way along this section. Next slide, please.
It was a little hard to see
Yeah.
in a vehicle. I mean, I was out there and, you know, you just have to be out there on foot. In the previous slide, if the city owns that land that's off to the right, that'd be a nice little stop off place, you know, for a water fountain or just any water, but just even just a stop off if the city owns that part out to the right.
Yeah, I think we own, it's more of a slot of land. And then to the right is actually private property. Yeah, I believe so. Advance the next slide, please. So this was just, so some of these pictures are just a grouping of, you know, we kind of flooded as we went through, but go ahead and advance the next slide, please. Okay, so now the path would come up to Bunn Street. This is one of the challenges that we'll have to look at with the study is there's a house there on the right that we're going to need to put the path in between the road and the house. So we have some obstacles here that I wanted to present to you folks. There's a couple different approaches here, but we really don't know an answer at this point when we're applying for the grant. Through the study and we gather survey data and we really get into the clock building of it, that's when we'll know what our options are with regard to getting the path south.
Okay, so at that house, I'm sorry, I'm just diving in here, sorry. At that house there, it would turn and go south in front of that house, or what happens at that house?
Yeah, it would go, the idea would be it would be between the road and the house. Now, if that presents an obstacle, there's a couple other things that could be done. One could go around the house. Potentially on the backside, there is space. That's an extreme case. There could be negotiations with the property owner where the house is potentially purchased. That's another possibility. We don't know. Our goal would be to do the minimal that we would need to do, but we have to have a safe distance from the edge of the path and the road. So we can't put the path like at the edge of the road with federal highway funds. We need a space of at least 5 feet. 5 feet. Yeah. So this is looking back at the house and kind of their front yard. Can you advance the next slide, please? And the next one. So this would now go south, and you can kind of see the throat between the trees line on the right and the power poles on the left. That space there would be where the path would be. The master plan, bicycle master plan, I believe showed paved shoulders through this location, but we believe the path would actually be better to be used in this space between the power pole and the trees. Farther south from this entrance, there's a force main easement, which means that there's encumbered land. That path would be on the top of that easement. Next slide, please. This was when we were out there. We, every time we if we get an opportunity, we can see a bicyclist, you can see the bicyclist in the middle of and they're riding their bike on Bunn. So, this would help, this path would help that person to get off the road if they needed to and get. So pictures of bicyclists on the street would be helpful. Yeah, right. That's the home in question. Next slide, please. This is looking back kind of to the west a little bit in that area where I was saying that's private property, and then a little bit to the right is city right away. Next slide, please. So now we're jumped back down to Bunn Street. So this is that throat that I was saying, that space that would make a nice bike path space along Bunn all the way down to Hamilton. I think we're near the end here, Phil. That's it. So that kind of gives you, the intent was to give you an overview. Our intention is to apply by November 2nd. The reason that we brought this to you folks was to get some feedback. And we would like to have an endorsement. The grant reviewers do look for commissions like yourself that have thought these type of things through and brought this forth to a public arena. We also will be taking this particular application to the Plan Commission also to get their thoughts, and then we will go to City Council because we will be asked to get a resolution from City Council of support of this project. Obviously, there would be a financial commitment, which we're working through the details of that right now. And we'll have that prior to the City Council meeting. As far as schedule, if we were to get the grant, there's usually a sunset period on the grant, which could be, say, 4 to 5 years. So the first phase would be what they call a phase 1 study, which, as I mentioned, you go through all the environmental, the public hearing components, the pre-designed components, and then after that is approved, then you're authorized to go ahead and purchase easements or right of way or whatever that is needed, and then you can begin doing what they call phase 2, which is plans, specifications, estimates, the real hard details, then go out to bid, and then do a construction period, like this would probably take all summer to build. When I look at these type of projects and I look at the obstacles out there, I see a mobile home park along Bunn. I don't see any sidewalks. I see where that bicyclist that I showed you, if you go down under Veterans on Bunn, it's really tight. There's a box, kind of like a bridge box culvert. There's no real easy way for folks to walk there. I see this as an opportunity to unlock or cross a barrier, which is really Veterans Parkway. To get access to the north, if it gets connected to Hamilton Road, then that allows us access to the east of the railroad tracks over there by Morrissey, where there's a commercial area. This grant is intended to be a transportation enhancement grant, which means it's not intended to be a recreational grant. So things like benches or pavilions or water fountains are not eligible items. But what we look at this is, let's get the backbone in, and then if parks and recreation would look for other opportunities, then at least we have the backbone in, we have the network in, the meat of it in. So I see barriers here for folks to get access to the north there safely. One of the things at night that I saw was a fairly dark corridor, particularly south of Easy Street near Veterans at the bridge. Also on Bunn is fairly dark. We will throw in to the grant some path lighting for safety reasons there. We'll have to do some more study. Some of the lighting is not eligible, but we do believe that that's a safety concern, and that would be helpful if you folks had some thoughts on that too. Now I'd open it up to any questions that you might have.
This is Eddie. I'll hop in.
Okay, just a second here, Eddie. First of all, we're going to need you to speak up. Okay, first of all, Eddie's a seasoned biker, Mr. Schunkweiler. He's the biker guy here, so I would say, Eddie, you go to it.
Thank you. So first off, kudos to you because this is very, very exciting to see. I know from talking to some of the cyclist groups in town, and from personal experience, this Bund Street in particular is a really, really key piece of safely connecting the the central and northern part of Bloomington with the southern part of Bloomington. So very excited to see that these plans are coming together perhaps more quickly than some of us had anticipated. Craig, I'm glad you called out the comment about the intent for this not being recreational and it more being about I don't know what the proper term would be, but really about transportation infrastructure as opposed to recreation. I say that because a couple observations along those lines. One would be, I think that the route that you're talking about, the piece that we're seeing in gray on this screen, yes, so north of Bund Street, connecting it up to Lincoln. I think that route overall is going to be really effective for transportation, as you said, thinking of folks in the area who rely on bicycles for their primary mode of transportation. Obviously, it's going to be connecting all of the mobile home communities and things to downtown, which is really, really wonderful. One concern, aside from the lighting that you talked about, which it's obviously dark at night, it's also, for lack of a better word, a little remote at night. It doesn't go through a well-populated, that where it goes along the railroad tracks. I mean, that's effectively manufacturing area. The one thing we might be thinking about additionally would be safety measures for folks who are commuting at night besides lighting. Nothing comes to mind off the top of my head, but I'd be curious what we've implemented on other parts of the trail where that's maybe been a concern, that individuals riding on their own or walking on their own, do they feel safe besides lighting? But another thing, and I understand you're kind of talking about backbone here and then building farther down the road. But one thing, I kind of smiled when you showed the picture along Bund Street, and we already saw the picture of the cyclist riding. Again, I'm know from experience, I don't know if we have the data, but I suspect even if we don't have the data, it would align with what I'm about to say. Bund Street, the entirety of Bund Street, right, all the way up to Oakland and south, is a really key piece for not only cyclists who commute, but for recreational cyclists as well. And a recommendation that I would make would be, while certainly pursuing these from the plans that you outlined from a transportation infrastructure perspective, to consider what we can do along Bund Street in the relatively short term after implementing this, to include things like bike lanes along the entirety of Bund Street.
Do you mean at the end of this trail, you mean where this will stop? Is that what you're talking about?
I mean, all the way from Oakland down to Woodward Road, to increase safety of cyclists who are on Bund Street and not using the trail. Whether there's not trail. So in other words, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be driving more cyclists to Bund Street, which is already not a safe road, but it's one that, like it or not, cyclists use all the time because it's the safest one to get south of Veterans Parkway. And so besides,
I get what you're saying. There's not that many options to cross Veterans over, under, whatever it is when you're on a bike. So they're using Bund because there's no other choice right now. Is that correct?
If you think from a cyclist's perspective now, crossing from anywhere east of east of downtown, effectively having to go out of their way to go downtown to get on the trail, then to cross down onto Bund Street. I think we're realistically still going to be seeing cyclists crossing under Bund Street at the spot that you were concerned about, Rini. And I agree with you there. Again, I don't think that needs to be part of the phase one plans. That's not what I'm suggesting. But I think that ultimately what we're going to be finding is a good problem, which is directing and encouraging more cyclists to be using Bund Street, which they're already doing right now. And how can we do that in the safest manner for them? And because the trail is going to serve pedestrians and cyclists, right? Not just cyclists. So do we have opportunities to create additional bike lanes and things for the gaps on Bund Street before they can pick up trail access? Does that make sense?
Ed, I've got a question for you. Looking at this map, we've obviously got the Constitution Trail and this black line that comes down through here. And I'm assuming that's kind of what one of the paths that you're talking about. And then we've got this strip of Bund through here that doesn't have anything currently proposed for it. We've got this little connector piece in here that we know is a gap. Would it be better to prioritize this gap here once this trail is built, or to try to do some type of on-road accommodation for this longer stretch
Yeah.
here, knowing there's going to be a pinch point at the bridge underneath Veterans Parkway?
In my opinion, it would be significantly better and more used to try to find an on-road accommodation, as opposed to connecting the trail on Lincoln itself.
Okay, let's clarify if we can. Phil, we are talking about from Lincoln Street. Your question is, would it be better perhaps to link Lincoln Street south to the beginning of the Bund Street? Is that correct? And that would be on Bund from Lincoln to wherever the yellow line starts there, right?
Right. So right now the master plan shows the trail coming down here, this gray line that we're talking about, at which point it switched to paved shoulders where the yellow is. We also have this piece of trail that runs through here that basically stops at Lincoln. There's a little bit of a jog there. I guess my question was, would it be more advantageous to go ahead and develop this piece here that we've talked about and is in the plan, or add a section that's not in the plan here? Would this be so much out of the way that people would not use that and would continue to use Bund Street without any type of bike accommodations, I guess is my question.
Yeah, and again, for speaking for cyclists, leaving pedestrians out of it for a minute, because for pedestrians, there are some stretches along Lincoln that don't have sidewalk, but by and large, it's not that far of a stretch, I would say. I think when you're speaking for cyclists, the entirety of Bund Street is used so frequently because of the lack of a trail connection or anything like that to go south. I think that the as you outlined it, Phil, the on-road accommodation along Bund Street, if we can make it happen for cyclists, would be really, really, really welcome. It's because that's Bund Street. People go fast down, drivers go fast down Bund Street, and it's a tight stretch. But it's, again, even despite that, it's still the slowest, safest route for cyclists to get to all the really popular recreational sites south of town.
And the reason I bring it up is this section along Lincoln right now is calling for bike lanes, as opposed to path or something else.
Okay.
So that would blend well with more of a bike accommodation as opposed to a pedestrian accommodation. But that was where I was thinking. Not to get off the topic of this project we're talking about.
That's good. That's good. I think and the last comment I'll make along those lines, Phil, is that the one with the way that I'm speaking about it, of just plowing straight down Bund instead of the jog on Lincoln, the one thing you gain with Lincoln, which is nice, admittedly, is connecting the north and the west branch of the trail, right? Which I think is the primary appeal of doing it that way. But again, from experience, and I think if there was a round of feedback at this stage, cyclists would talk about the safety concerns along Bund Street, coupled with the fact that it's such a popular route for cyclists that I think lots of folks would vote in preference of keeping Bund Street safer if it was one or the other. In other words, bumping the connection a little bit farther down to the end of the new stretch, where the new stretch is going to be hitting Bund Street, in my personal opinion.
So you're saying it would be more advantageous to connect down, have people cross under Veterans twice, and to come back and go downtown?
I guess I have a question here for the biking community. That little pink stretch there on Lincoln, wouldn't the bike people go over? That's just like what, a couple blocks there. If there was a trail there, wouldn't they just kind of go over to it and use that instead of Bund Street?
It's possible. I would have to. I mean, it's possible. It's just currently that's not what I see people happen. And I'm thinking of, like, for example, every Thursday night there's a group ride that's sponsored by one of the local bike shops, and that's either going west down Lincoln or going south down Bund. Neither one is accommodating for cyclists right now, but every time the choice is made to go south down Bund instead of going west over to Lincoln. I don't see that changing with the trail being there. I think people would still take the risks of going down to Bund and then getting on the trail possibly once they get to the new stretch of trail. It's a prediction. I could be wrong, but I think that's what.
Pardon me, Renee, this is John. Could you repeat that question that you asked?
Okay, my question, John, if you could hear me, was, would people go from Lincoln and jog over on what we're seeing as the pink stretch? Wouldn't they just go over to the gray stretch and go down rather than going straight down Bund Street? I mean, I'm not much of a biker, but
With your final destination being where?
South on Bund towards Woodrig. Look down at, Bund and Woodrig. If I were biking north to south, wouldn't I rather jog in there on the pink stretch and go down a trail there rather than
Go to Morrissey?
rather than go to Bund Street, straight down there where the little hand is.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there'd be a lot of easements and a lot of, is it true, there wouldn't be enough city right of way currently to add on to a Bund Street redo there, is there?
Yeah, it gets pretty tight through there, but I mean that obviously is something that we could look at in the future too. I don't know that this project would preclude something along those lines, or that we would not do this in favor of doing something like that. I think the opportunity still exists to pursue this grant, to do this connection as shown in the master plan that was approved. And I guess that's where we would focus today.
It's Vicky Lee.
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I had just wanted to, from what I understood, that this is a transportation over recreation grant, and just wanted to try to kind of remind everyone that it's more than just cyclists who will be using this. So I think it's really important to keep in mind that the lower income families, single parents, pushing baby strollers, trying to get to a bus stop, people with, various types of disabilities who may find this more useful than trying, to maneuver in the middle of a road. So just trying to keep that all in our minds as we're kind of looking at these different options, and the plan itself. But aside from that, I did have a question about the house, and some of the other barriers that were along Bunn Street. And I think Craig said that, I wasn't sure, I wanted to clarify this. The trail itself is 10 feet, but for safety reasons, it has to be 5 feet away from the side of the road to begin. So that's 15 feet into the property. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. So there are some definite barriers that you may be facing along some of those lines, because I can't remember from that picture, but it didn't look like there was 15 feet there.
Right. I guess I would say there's some challenges, that's for sure.
Okay.
But that is also where the existing sewer easement comes into play. We already do have an easement for other purposes through a portion of that, do we not?
It's actually south and along the mobile home park. So at that location where the house is, there is not an easement.
But the majority of Bunn Street along the trailer park, mobile home park has, it's more of a pinch point at the house as opposed to an issue along the length of Bunn Street.
Yeah, that's a good characterization. Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ricky Lee. I thought that was a good point about looking at, not just looking at it as a plat. I'm not saying they're doing this, but looking at it as a plat of the city, you have to look at the neighborhood and know what are the needs of that neighborhood, and what are the limitations of the people, the abilities and disabilities, and what are the needs of the people who are living in that area. And I think that's why we have groups such as ours to help identify that. So your comments, as well as the comments from our biking professional there, help bring those to light. And I think this would be something that I think the city would pursue later with the neighborhood, and not just looking at a map like what we're doing, but with maybe the people in the neighborhood, certainly the council person for that neighborhood. And I don't really know who that is. I can't quite maybe guess right offhand here who that would be, but those would be future discussions, is what is the needs of that neighborhood, whether it be, are they biking? Yes or no? Are they strollering? And then the continuation, what does that do with the bus system? I mean, if we are helping connect people to a bus line, or does there need to be a change with the bus to accommodate people that are now able to use this? One thing changes everything, or has the potential to. So I think these are very good points about the biking community, the people in the mobile homes, and what are their needs to get across town, and the differing abilities of people using the entire transportation system.
I'm going to add one thing quick too. Typically, as part of projects like this that originating with federal funds, is there is a public component to it as well. So there would be at least one, probably a public open house or something, where we would invite the public in to talk about the project and give feedback during that preliminary design phase, like Craig was talking about. And I think I saw Ed had his hand up a bit ago.
Ed, I can't see you, but if you're there, go right ahead.
Thank you. And, all my comments about additional recommendations aside, I echo what Ms. Beneke said. And I think toward the goal of increasing transportation infrastructure, I applaud the work that you've done here. I know that this has posed some challenges in terms of access through private property and things like that have kind of left folks scratching their heads for a long time how to make this happen. So very excited to see that we can be finally making some breakthroughs here. Shoot, I lost the other comment I was going to make. It was regarding the house, excuse me, that Ms. Beneke pointed out. I can picture in my head of going past it several times why it poses the problem, but I'll admit I'm struggling to make a recommendation as to what the best approach would be. What's the best thinking today about how to address it?
So being an engineer by trade, I'm cautious. I do see a challenge there. We don't have physical measurements. We really need to get more data, and we need to. So, we need to see first off, is there a possibility to get it in the front yard? What does that do to the property? We would have to talk to the property owner, see if there's an opportunity to work with the property owner. If there's opposition, could we go behind the house? We may have to get creative. So if you're catching me being vague, it's because I don't honestly know the answer. And I'd rather be vague with you than to tell you something that won't come true. So, that's why at this point, this is like a 10,000 foot view when we do a grant app and we look and we walk it and we're looking for major sticking points. Obviously the roadway lighting or the darkness caught my attention too, or our staff's attention. But we, we have to study these during the study phase. That itself will take usually about a year to go through the study phase. And we want to do it right, and we have a lot of obligations that we have to meet through the study phase. So I wish I could give you a more definitive answer, but as Phil brought this up, that's the parcel in question. There could be that, like I said, the opportunity to go back and around to the west around it, potentially. We never know until we get into it.
Okay, thank you. I understand. Thank you. And Phil, this view is much more helpful to see how we could possibly go behind it. So thank you for putting that up.
Okay, so I have just a logistical question here for you. What is the timeline for applying for this grant, or where is the deadline at which you would like to hear from us, from the council, from the planning commission, then the council? What's your time frame here?
So if we back up to the end, the deadline is November 2nd. That's the last day. We would like, with you folks to preferably, your input has been very valuable today. It would be nice if we could get an affirmative in support of this tonight. We'll be going to Plan Commission here in a couple weeks, then City Council after that. And we felt it was important to get your input and the Plan Commission's input so that we can share that with City Council too. And then your comments also will go into the grant application as public involvement too, which is very, very important.
My other question was talking about the match, whether it be 80-20, 90-10, or 100. Is that based on the city's budget? Who decides? Who's the decider?
So ITEP grants have traditionally been 80-20, so 20% local. Now they have a new community score component. So what they do is they ask us to sketch out the location. And I believe, was it in the packet, Phil? Yeah, so there's basically they use the census tracts, and there's some score components due to income, and I can't remember what all the other parts that were in there, but you basically get a score relative to who you're going to help, really. So
yeah, I'm kind of familiar with that, but I guess my question specifically is, would that score come from the entirety of the city of Bloomington, or would it come from the neighborhood where, kind of zeroing in on this particular neighborhood?
It's this particular neighborhood, I think, within a half a mile.
I guess I can see for this neighborhood, knowing this neighborhood fairly well, the potential is there because they don't really have a lot of other than the road, unless you're in a vehicle, they don't have a lot of other options. So I think the opportunity to help the people in the mobile home community, which is pretty densely populated in a pretty small area and covers really quite a few more people than you might think, the potential's there to do a lot of good for a lot of people who don't have a whole lot of other options right now. So, you say 80-20, but I say 90-10 or 100 based on the need and how much that this could help.
So for budgeting purposes, we'll likely assume a 20% match. If we get a 10 or 0, that's bonus. So, but we'll assume the 20%.
Okay. I guess I can't see everybody's face. So I guess I'm wondering if there's any more questions, any discussion. Let's hear from you. And Phil, if you can see everybody that I can't see, go ahead and, pull them.
I'll flip
And
through.
Rainey, you might also be open to a motion, right? And then discussion.
Yes, I would, Mr. Boyle.
I mean,
That's what I
because
would.
a lot of times that could be a motion and then there's something to discuss other than just, that's just a thought.
That's what I would say. The motion we have in the packet is that we recommend you pass the following motion to recommend that staff move forward with constructing Constitution Trail Southeast Extension, Lafayette to Hamilton, contingent upon funding availability, and submitting a 2020 ITEP grant application for that funding.
Okay, so I guess I am going to ask right now to see if there is a motion to approve this and recommend what Mr. Allen just read to us in the affirmative. Looking for a motion if there is one.
This is John, and I'll make a motion to accept to endorse the ITEP application.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Covey to endorse this. So I guess we would be looking for discussion, further discussion. Is that correct, Mr. Boyle?
I think we need a second.
Okay, we need a second first. Do we have a second to endorse and recommend that the city go ahead in pursuing this?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Breitweiser is seconding. And now we will see if there is further discussion.
I have a question. Is it appropriate for me to ask?
Yes, anybody.
I'd like to revisit an item that Mr. Breitweiser brought up. Sir, you mentioned maybe looking at the area near veterans being a little remote, and maybe other safety measures could be implemented. I wonder if we could maybe brainstorm as a group what that might be, because it could be a grant eligible item potentially. And, I guess in the top of my head, I just wonder if obviously lighting, it helps, but what other items that maybe the group thought that could be?
Eddie, were you able to hear that?
Yeah, so again, I'm thinking off the top of my head more so than knowing exactly what options are traditionally employed in either Bloomington or Normal. But for example, I can't think of what they're called, but you'll see around college campuses and things like that, like security alert.
Emergency phones.
Oh yeah, the blue emergency alerts. And I don't know if there's any of those on the trail anywhere else, but I would have to agree when you said that, Eddie. I was agreeing with you, and part of it is because you are kind of far out there. If you had any kind of a bike accident, it could be quite a while till somebody happened onto you. I don't know if that would be grant eligible.
So that's a good point, Rini. Another example might be, and I can't, off the top of my head, I can't picture these being on the trail in Bloomington. I know that they are in Normal, like bike repair stations that might include like a bike pump, some basic tools.
Yeah, Craig, I don't know if you've seen those over in Normal, over by Representative Brady's office in Uptown Normal. There's a little bike repair station. That's the one that comes to mind for me. I don't know if there's any in Bloomington or not.
Probably access to drinking fountains.
Would you consider that more of a safety component with the drinking fountains, or more of an amenity, recreational amenity?
I mean,
What's the argument for including that as a safety component? I guess. Help us with the verbiage there.
dehydration, cleaning wounds if they happen, things like that, perhaps.
I think that might depend on the availability of water lines, but I can make you a safety argument on that if you need one. That's a good point. Yeah, and the lighting and water. And then I'm trying to think too from a pedestrian transportation perspective, what might be helpful. You know, we were talking about the bikers, and you know, we all love the bikers, but if I'm there with my granddaughter with the stroller, or you know, the people from the mobile home community that where this is their route, what would they need?
And I would say if anybody else has any or other ideas, feel free to share them if you think of something after the fact, after the meeting.
I would
Yeah.
say direction. I mean, signage is expensive, so directional signage, because if you're out there and you get lost, or a direct, you know, a distance sign, it's a quarter mile up to Lincoln, or it's an eighth of a mile. Signage, I think, from a safety could be from a safety perspective to direct people. And if you're looking for what might be included in a grant, directional signage, I think there could be an argument made in favor for the safety.
No, this is all good. What we'll do is also brainstorm as a staff, and then we'll go back to the guidelines to see what, what's an eligible item, for the grant. I think of one thing I think that could help the most is the more people that you have using the path, the safer it seems like it would be. Um, and it's just getting that barrier, getting that knocked down. Now, one thing I do want to mention with the grant, there cannot be any time of day restrictions, so that is not eligible. So what that means is this thing has to be open 24 hours a day. So a time of day restriction would be, say, open from sunrise to sunset. So that's not eligible for the grant. It has to allow people to use it at any time of the day. That's why the lighting component comes into play. I think of somebody that works downtown perhaps and lives in the mobile home park, and they may work potentially in a different shift or time period, and they may get off work and they need to come back. That's where the transportation component comes into play.
I agree with all that, Craig. And I thought of one more. This might be a little difficult to spin, but it's maybe something to chew on. Is from when you think of the types of businesses and the other types of road access that are off of Bunn Street and off of Easy Street, you're going to be dealing with trucks. There's a concrete factory not far from there. Off the top of my head, I think there might be a junkyard or something along those lines. So toward that end, I think it's easy to make an argument that trail cleanup has a safety component, right? That there's probably a stronger likelihood for debris from anything from stones to scrap metal to litter coming off not the interstate, excuse me, but off the overpass, things like that. And so could there be some type of this might require some research, but could there be something along the lines of debris cleanup being incorporated into the budget, just given the route itself?
Good, thank you.
If if this needed to be open as a 24-hour part of the trail, that's kind of a game changer in regard to safety and my concern. To me, then lighting is paramount for safety. And I think there would be data from this neighborhood that might bear this out. Perhaps not all transportation data, but there's, there would be data from the city in regard to personal safety in this area. I think that the trail, if that were the case, if it were well lit, it would help this area. And then the other thing is an emergency call box or whatever you engineers call those. That would easily, I think, fall under the safety category there, from the perspective of crime to falling down to bike accidents to hitting a rock. That's what I see is from the bike thing, is hitting a rock. The quarry is right there and the rocks fly off the truck, whether they want to admit it or not, it does. Okay. And I would be that person that would, be on my bike and hit a rock and take a dive. So this part of it, I think really, if this is an important component of the grant, there would be a lot of safety to consider, and this could greatly improve the neighborhood's general safety. But I really think we'd really have to look at, from a safety perspective, if this is intended to be a 24-hour use thing. Ed, go ahead.
I think those are really good thoughts, Rini, and that prompted two more that again, I know we want to wrap up here, but two more that would be worth considering. One would be, I think that there's some relatively simple signage that could be put together to be posted along the trail too around safety. What to do if you feel unsafe due to crime, what to do if you feel unsafe because you had an accident, things like that. I'm not sure what precedent we have for those in other parts of town, but I think that could be probably covered under the grant funding as well. And it prompted one more thought, which is that, so with the connection to coming off of Easy Street and then connecting to Bunn, setting aside the concerns about the house right there for a moment, off the top of my head, I don't believe that the crossing signal for the railroad on Bunn Street has gates on it or is in any way equipped for pedestrians. Granted, I recognize that since there's not a sidewalk there and the trail itself is not going to be crossing the railroad tracks, we should probably be we should be prepared for the prospect that more pedestrians might be interested in crossing the railroad tracks going north once they get from Easy Street to Bunn, right? In other words, all the way from Lincoln to Bunn, you're going to be on the west side of the railroad tracks. At what point are folks going to want to go to the east or the north side of the railroad tracks? And do we need to consider anything about some type of pedestrian crossing at the railroad tracks? Yeah, thank you. Because I don't believe, off the top of my head, I think any consideration there would just be for drivers, if there's anything. I know they replaced them last year, but I off the top of my head, I can't picture that there's any type of safety apparatus there aside from blinking lights.
Is that a live tracks right there?
It is, and this is from July of 19, so this is fairly new. The path is going to be over here, correct, Craig, on the left side of the trees, between the trees and the poles.
That's correct.
So yeah, there's nothing. I mean, there's lights, but there's no gates. There's certainly no sidewalk or any type of anything on the road other than the road pavement itself.
Right. So in other words, I understand that the trail itself would not actually be intersecting the railroad there, but I think it's very reasonable to assume, it's 50 to 100 feet, depending on the way the trail goes. It's going to be maybe 20 feet away from pedestrians who would want to be crossing the railroad tracks. And so should something we invest in safety at the railroad tracks.
Yeah, I think those are good points, and that would be further within that phase one study that we talked about, and begin to look at basically how people get to the trail, and we'll have to talk internally whether or not we would view that as something to apply for with this grant. The barrier with that is anytime you deal with the railroad, it elevates the game completely to a whole other level. And I'm not trying to diminish that, but that could be another project that we look at in the future, you know, particularly since there's no pedestrian accommodations along Bunn. And you had mentioned, Ed, also about the, you know, the paved shoulders or bike lanes too. Obviously, you see that pinch point in the with that bridge. You know, that's something that's really tight. There's really no space to get through there at all. That's why I think this trail using the available space there to the west is so appealing. At least it allows folks to walk unimpeded. Here, it's pretty tight. I mean, I don't know of many that would want to walk with their children, you know, through this zone.
When I was talking about the flooding on Bun Street, that's the area there that I see routinely floods.
Well, I want to thank you folks for your comments. This is exactly the kind of interaction that I was hoping that I would get coming in as a new city engineer. And I really appreciate having a committee like you guys or commission. I had a very good rapport with my commission in Urbana there, and I look forward to working with you folks in the future.
You're not getting rid of me though.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Okay, so if I'm correct, we're in the middle of a motion here that has been seconded. So I guess we're going to move to a vote. And I believe what is on the table here and in everybody's home is, are we going to recommend to the city that they pursue the ITEP grant? Would that be a good shortened version that everybody can vote on?
Continue moving forward with the project.
Okay, to continue, yeah, to
As-
continue
yes,
moving forward with
to
the
be
project.
potentially funded
Yes,
with the ITEP grant.
yes. Okay, does everybody understand what we're voting on? A motion has been made and seconded, and I will ask Mr. Allen to call the roll to approve or not approve, to approve by saying aye, or to not approve by saying nay. Mr. Allen?
Commissioner Beneke,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Brightweiser,
Aye.
Commissioner Corey,
Aye.
and Commissioner Sanders. I'm sorry.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Sanders, can you please speak so that it is on the record louder?
Aye.
Okay, apparently Phil heard you, but I want to make sure Mr. Boyle hears you. Okay, I believe we have a unanimous, our vote was unanimous to move ahead with this. Okay, so we're going to move ahead here. Thanks, I thought that was very, very good discussion, and I'll be anxious to see how this moves ahead, and certainly happy to assist you in any way. Let's look ahead to the citizen comments. We're on item number 5C, if you're following along at home. Citizen comments, I don't know if there's any review or discussion, but I would say go to it if you have anything to say. Call them out by number and we can have a look as we follow along.
Let me just tee this up real quick.
Okay.
for Alicia especially, who hasn't been through this process before. Um, this item is something that we do every month. This came out of a request originally just to see what all complaints and requests and everything that we're getting as a city staff. So you can see I put everything on here. Some of them are very small and very minor. You know, I drove through a signal and I don't think it detected my car. Some of them are quite a bit more involved, whether that's, you know, wanting to remove parking from an entire block, change a intersection to a four-way stop or a new signal um, or other things. There's a pretty good range of stuff. This is the stuff that we're currently working on. There's quite a few more on this list than I would hope there would be. I always encourage anybody, if when you get this, if you have questions on a specific item, you just want more information, you don't really have much to say about it, feel free to just call me or email me, and I can give you some of the background just in the interest of being efficient with everybody's time here. Certainly, if there's something you want to comment on, though, this is the opportunity. So, yeah, just mention the number if you have a question on anything, and I'll do my best to answer. The other advantage of pointing it out to me ahead of time is that I can get a current status on it and have a better answer. Then I'll look into that. So
I do see John has a question. If you want to go ahead with Phil, feel free.
I don't have a question.
Okay. I'm sorry, I mistook that arm wave for a question.
No, okay. That was a nephew.
I just want to point out, I do see a lot of people requesting traffic calming. And I guess that my thought is that a lot of those are just like aggravated at the moment, but they really don't want traffic calming in their neighborhood because once it's there, you can't really get rid of it. I mean, do you pursue all of these and look at that, or what happens when you get a traffic calming request? Because there are a lot of these at the moment.
the first thing we do is I look at the road that it's on. We do have a formal traffic calming policy. It's on our website. If you can't find it, let me know and I'll point you to it. But we have criteria that needs to be met in order to get traffic calming on your street. You need to have at least 900 cars a day on it. You can't have more than 2,000 cars. The speeds we'll go out and measure, and they need to fall within a certain amount above. The violation rate has to be a certain percentage. The amount over the posted speed limit has to be a certain percentage. So with the goal of all that being, we really want to find the places that are an actual problem, not just a perceived problem, for one. But two, we also want to apply the devices in a spot where they're going to do some good. If you have 100 cars on a street, we could put speed bumps on there if somebody's driving really fast, but ultimately that's only going to slow down 100 people. And the money that it costs to install and maintain these is significant. Similarly, we're not going to put them on a Washington Street or a Lincoln Street that sees, 5 to 10 to 15,000 cars a day. At the other end of the spectrum, those are the streets where we want the cars, not on the local residential streets. So we've kind of got those thresholds bracketed in there. So the first thing I do when I get a request is I look and see, one, is it a local street, which would make it eligible? If it's an arterial or a collector, it would not be eligible. The second thing I do is I look at the volumes from our most recent count to see if it's possible that it falls within that range. If the last time we counted it and it was 6,000 cars, then it's not going to fall within the range because it wouldn't have dropped down to 2,000. So I do some of that kind of initial pre-screening. If that disqualifies the street, then I have a response back to the resident that made the request right away. If it looks like it might meet the criteria, then we go and we put out counters, which they're little black boxes that we tape onto the road. It measures how fast the cars are driving, as well as it counts them so we know how many cars there are. And then we've got that actual data for the actual spot of the request to compare against the criteria. If it then meets all the criteria, our next step is to, we have a public meeting where everybody from the neighborhood can come in. We'll go through and we'll lay out this, the spots where we're proposing to put speed humps in. And then people can comment on it. And then the people who live on that street get a vote on whether or not they want to install the calming. If a certain percentage of them, I believe it's 70%, vote yes, then we move forward with installing it. If it's not that high, then we do not. If it fails, you're allowed to reapply 1 year later. If it's successful and it is put in, the and somebody then in the future wants to have it taken back out, the threshold there is 90% people need to be supportive of taking it out. So we really want it to be people to be serious. They want it because of the effort that is involved with putting it in. Each of the speed humps cost somewhere in the $10,000 to $12,000. Then every time we resurface or anytime we're doing maintenance on the road, there's a lot more repair involved with it and everything else. And then you have additional striping and signage and everything else that goes along with it too. So we're willing to do that in situations where it's needed and it's warranted, but it doesn't make sense to spend $20,000 or $30,000 to put speed bumps on a road that has 50 cars on it when we could be more efficiently spending that money elsewhere. So that's kind of a quick overview of that policy without
Oh, I
getting into the
agree with
specifics
that.
of
I
it.
just wondered, is it faster to just send people to the policy so that they can figure out for themselves that they don't have 500 cars or they've got more than 6,000 cars? I mean, do you have to go through, a number of hoops can you just send the residents to the policy?
I do. And the first step when I get a response is I send them a copy of the link so they can go and read the full policy while I do my initial screening. And like I said, if it clearly isn't gonna make it, then that's the end of the process. If it looks like it could be within the ranges, then we go to the next step.
Okay, thank you. I just noticed that we just seem to have a lot of those over the last few months, and maybe everybody's just kind of generally out of patience in general, and everybody wants a speed bump in their neighborhood. I don't know, but
I think there's a lot more people at home the last several months as well who are now seeing how fast their neighbors drive through their neighborhood. I think is part of it too. It's harder to see what everybody else is doing if you're at work or so outside the house.
okay, cool. Well, there's another study project for the transportation engineers across the country. Are there more requests for speed bumps because everybody's at home? Anything else we want to pursue off this list, or shall we move ahead?
This is John. I'm gonna have to sign off pretty soon.
I think we can move ahead to old business. Do we have any old items to be brought back to the commission at this point?
I've got two quick things I'm going to mention. One, we did get notice from IDOT that they are moving forward with the next round of the next steps on the Route 9 project through town. There may be a virtual public open house coming on that at some point in the future. We'll let you know what's going on. Don't have any other details other than that.
Okay, that's great news. Wow, that's terrific news, I would say. Do we have any idea where that's going to start?
No, they're still wrapping up their phase one. This will be the end of that process and the start of the construction drawings. So I'm anticipating that at that open house is where they will start talking about what's being done, when, and where. I'm hoping.
I would say that's great news at this point in time. Start anywhere, right? Yay! I think we would be interested in being a part of that. The last time that y'all did this here in City Hall and had the whole map spread out and all of that, that was very useful to me. So I would like to see us informed so we would have the opportunity to ride along on this project. Yay.
One other old business that we've talked about in the past, the downtown striping. If you remember, we talked about that last pre-COVID. We've kind of hit a little bit of a pause on that. Once we started doing all the downtown dining outside, we are kind of we're working and finding our way through that with the intent that we may try to do that on more of a permanent basis, not year round, but hopefully we're not in the same COVID social distancing situation next summer, but we see the opportunity to maybe continue with a lot of those dining areas. So we're trying to better feel out the impact on that before we move forward on that. So don't think that there's nothing happening on that front because it hasn't come back, but there's not much happening at this moment on that as we try to gain more data on what's going on now. So that's all I've got on old business. If anybody else has anything.
I actually hear from people regularly with opinions about the downtown parking and stuff. And I think I see more interest in street closure on the north side of the square than what I was hearing a year ago. So from business people, residents downtown, and that may still be in the mix too. I don't know, but I would guess we could probably table a further discussion on this for future months, since we're just kind of in a holding pattern here. But I assume you're not going to stripe anything until, yeah, he's shaking his head. We're not going to stripe anything until we have more of a decision. But I guess I would like to hear more from this maybe next month or whenever our next, whatever this is. Okay. I know, I'm muted. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so that was old business. Let's move ahead to new business. Any new items to be brought before the commission? Mr. Brightweiser.
I had a question. I caught an article in WGLT that was about Bloomington resident Shelby Rapp, who had been coordinating with Public Works and the City Council regarding some safety measures on Tawanda Barnes. And I was just curious, what role, if any, did we see in this commission regarding that work?
Yeah, maybe I can quickly get everybody up to speed. There was a serious pedestrian hit and run accident on Tawanda Barnes Road, north of GE at Baywood. And that is, Phil, correct me here if I'm wrong, that was primarily a county transportation issue, but they are working with the city on looking into that accident, correct?
Yes. I was trying to bring up a map for people who don't know that part of town or don't know that road specifically. Baywood, if everybody can see that, Baywood is this intersection right here. The north-south road is Tawanda Barnes. It is a county highway, which means the county has full jurisdiction on Tawanda Barnes. That is our crossing, or it's our cross streets with Baywood. Eagle View Park over here to the east is a highly used park. Walt Bittner Park up here to the north at Rave Road is a higher used park as well. So there are some folks crossing, and anybody who's driven up and down Tawanda Barnes knows that it's a fast traveled road. As someone was crossing, they did get hit by a car that was traveling at a higher rate of speed. I've talked with Ms. Rapp some. We've had a meeting with the county engineer and assistant county engineer as well to talk about what some potential options are. We're currently going through gathering some data based on the number of people who are crossing the intersection on foot, as well as what the travel speeds and the number of cars are on Tawanda Barnes as well. So once we have a little bit more of an idea, better idea of what we're actually looking at, when are the people crossing, how many people are crossing, we're going to have a better idea of what potential options are. But we are looking at it. We're gathering data right now, and we are working pretty closely with the county to see if we can come up with something.
Pardon me, Mr. Allen. Can
Yes,
I be
sir.
excused to leave the meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. For the record, Mr. Covey is leaving at 5:46. I just want to say that's kind of out in my neighborhood, and I have been by there a number of times since this incident. And the issue here, for those of you not familiar with that, is that there is a hill on the north, looking north on Towanda Barnes. You have about from the time you see a car, you have about 10 seconds at Bay Point to get across the street there. But the gist of some of what the county had said was um, lowering the speed limit, for that road, the data wouldn't bear that out. Are there a lot of pedestrians? Well, I will say that there is a lot of traffic on Towanda Barnes Road that I think people think stops at GE, but it does indeed go further north, even when there's not people in school. It is a very wide intersection. To the south, the visibility is great. To the north, like I said, you've got 10 seconds to get across the road there. This was a serious accident right in the light of day on a Sunday morning at 11:30 or Saturday morning. I don't know which it was. Middle of the day accident. As far as what's a factor, a youthful driver, was at higher speed, the condition of the person crossing the street, none of that is really out there for discussion at the moment. But I'm pleased to see that the city is working with the county on this, because as you know, I am very concerned about pedestrian accidents. It's just kind of a personal thing with me. So I'd be interested to hear how this moves ahead. And this is difficult because Towanda Barnes is intended to carry traffic at a pretty good speed. So what do you do? And I don't think that there's an answer yet, but I'm happy to see that you all are looking at this. And I don't think, and this is not a criticism of the county, you can't just call it data, because, this is their neighborhood. Someone was hurt. There was a great deal of trauma amongst the people who witnessed it, the people who were trying to help the victim. The victim, there was just a lot of energy on that particular day. Pedestrian accidents are generally can be very bad news, and a lot of community concern around this intersection. So I'm happy to see you working so closely with the county on this.
This is Eddie again, and I from the little that I know, frankly, all I know is just what was published in the press. I don't have any firsthand experience, so I'll qualify that for the record. But a concern that this underscores for me is one that's come up in some of our recent meetings, which is just some of the I recognize we're gathering data right here. I'm going to say something that's maybe not factually accurate about this particular incident. I don't know how frequent or how severe incidents are at this particular intersection, but nonetheless, in previous discussions, we've been seeing how some of our most dangerous intersections are those that are that we share with the county, right? On veterans, for example, or with the state. Excuse me, sorry, Phil. But it just begs the question. I feel comfortable saying, in my opinion, there's no any investment in infrastructure that keeps people safe is worth making. And what can we be doing as a city as we're seeing more pedestrian use at some of these roads that are intended to be busy, to make sure that people can cross them safely, can get where they need to go safely, and protecting pedestrians in that regard. So I think that I would like to continue to stay in the loop on this and be using it as an example to learn what does the community want to hear. It's getting visibility. It's attracting attention. What's going to make people feel safe? And I think that we're going through all the right motions right now. But is there anything we can learn that we can apply to some of the situations that have been occurring on veterans, for example, or other parts around town as you're learning how to negotiate our relationship with other governmental bodies, aside from just those where we are fully in control of what we can do.
I think that's a good point, and I think the people in the neighborhood would be happy to know that we are having this discussion here today. And perhaps that can get back to them too in your work with the county and the neighborhood there with the Baywood people. Okay, I'm not sure if there is any further discussion. I would look for a motion to adjourn till our next meeting. Anyone?
I'll move. This is Ricky Lee.
Okay, Ricky Lee is making a motion that we adjourn. Do we have a second from anyone?
Second.
Okay, Miss Alicia Sanders, Alicia, right? Okay, ignore all those letters you said. Okay, Miss Sanders, thank you. Okay, hearing nothing else, we are, oh, hold on just one second here. Phil, go ahead.
Do we have a motion to adjourn? We do, and
Mr.
vote.
Ricky
Aye.
Lee and Miss Sanders.
Okay, Ms. Beneke,
Ms.
Yes,
Beneke.
sorry. Yes.
Yes,
Commissioner Bradley,
yes.
Commissioner Brightweiser,
Yes.
Commissioner Corey is departed, and Commissioner Sanders. I'm sorry, I forgot about John Luck leaving.
Ms.
That-
Sanders,
That was a yes.
okay. Okay, thank you, we're adjourned.
Thank you, bye.
That's good.
Thank you.
Um,